In September of 210 BCE, somewhere on a dirt road in eastern China, a convoy of carts crept forward under the summer heat. Inside, one of them sat the most powerful man who had ever lived dead for weeks. His advisors packed the cart with rotting fish, not for food, to mask the smell of his own decomposing body, so that no one in the empire would know their emperor was gone. This is how the man who unified China ended. Hidden, disguised, decaying in secret by the very men sworn to serve him. To understand how it came to this, we have to go back nearly 40 years, to a hostage prince with almost nothing. His name was Ying Zheng. Born in 259 BCE, he spent part of his childhood as a political hostage in a rival state, a common practice used to guarantee peace between warring kingdoms and a humiliating one. He was the son of a minor prince, with no guarantee of ever inheriting anything. But fortune turned. Through a series of deaths and political maneuvers, his father unexpectedly became king of Qin, one of 7 major states locked in a brutal, generations-long struggle for supremacy over China. When his father died just 3 years into his reign, the boy took the throne. He was 13 years old. For years, real power sat with a regent and a powerful chancellor named Liu Bui, a merchant-turned-statesman, rumored to have engineered the boy's rise for his own benefit. Zheng spent his adolescence surrounded by men who saw him as a puppet. He did not intend to stay one. By his early 20s, Zheng moved against the men who had controlled him, purging his regent, forcing his chancellor into exile, and seizing direct control of the state of Qin. He was no longer a hostage's son. He was a king with an army and an obsession. Qin, for over a century, had been building the most efficient war machine in Chinese history, a state built on strict legalist law, brutal meritocracy, and a population organized entirely around agriculture and war. Zheng inherited a weapon. Now he intended to use it. What followed was one of the most relentless military campaigns in ancient history. Between 230 and 221 BCE, in barely 9 years, Zheng's armies conquered, one by one, every rival state left standing. Han, Zhao, Wei, Chu, Yan, and finally, Qi. 6 kingdoms, 6 ruling houses that had existed for centuries, erased. This wasn't diplomacy dressed up as conquest. It was annihilation, executed with terrifying discipline. Qin's armies used mass conscription, standardized weaponry, and a merit-based command structure that outmatched the aristocratic militaries of its rivals. Entire kingdoms that had endured for over 500 years fell in the span of a single human generation. In 221 BCE, at the age of 38, Zheng stood as ruler of something that had never existed before, a single unified Chinese state. No king in Chinese history had ever held this much territory under one authority. The old title king wasn't big enough anymore. He gave himself a new one, Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. Conquest was the easy part. Holding it together was the real test. And here, Qin Shi Huang did something almost unheard of in the ancient world. He didn't just conquer 6 nations. He erased them. He abolished the old feudal nobility entirely, replacing regional lords with centrally appointed governors loyal only to him. He standardized the Chinese script so that the same written character meant the same thing whether you were in the north or the south. He standardized currency, weights, and measures. He standardized the axle widths of carts so that roads built for one region worked for all of them. Piece by piece, he was forcing 7 cultures to become one. He connected and extended defensive walls along the northern frontier into a single fortified line. The earliest version of what would eventually become the Great Wall of China, built at staggering human cost, using hundreds of thousands of conscripted laborers, many of whom died in the process and were buried where they fell. He also began constructing something else, something the world wouldn't discover for over 2,000 years. Beneath a massive burial mound, he ordered the creation of an entire afterlife army. Thousands of life-size terracotta soldiers, individually detailed, standing in military formation to guard him in death. It remains one of the largest and most elaborate tomb complexes ever constructed by any civilization on Earth. He had unified a civilization and built monuments meant to outlast it by millennia. But absolute power was rewriting him, and what it revealed was fear. Qin Shi Huang ruled through legalism, a philosophy built on strict law, harsh punishment, and centralized control. Dissent was not tolerated. In 213 BCE, on the advice of his chancellor, he ordered the burning of philosophical and historical texts that didn't align with the state's official ideology. An attempt to erase competing political and intellectual traditions, and with them, any framework for questioning his rule. The following year, historical sources record that hundreds of scholars were executed, accused of criticizing the emperor. He had unified the writing system. Now he was trying to unify what people were allowed to think. But the deeper obsession, the one that would ultimately consume him, was death itself. The man who had conquered 6 kingdoms could not conquer his own mortality. He became fixated on finding an elixir of immortality, sending expeditions across the region in search of legendary alchemists and mystical islands rumored to hold the secret to eternal life. He ingested mercury-based elixirs, believing them to be a path to eternal life. Historians today widely believe this slow mercury poisoning likely contributed to his declining health and eventual death. The most powerful man on earth spent his final years terrified of assassins, of rivals, of his own mortality, sleeping in different chambers each night so that no one, not even his own household, would know exactly where to find him. In 210 BCE, while on a tour of the eastern provinces, Qin Shi Huang died. He was 49 years old. What happened next is one of the most audacious cover-ups in ancient history. His death was concealed from the public, and even from most of his own court. 2 of his closest officials, the Chancellor Li Si and a court eunuch named Zhao Gao, feared that the news would trigger instability or threaten their own positions. So they hid the body in a covered carriage and continued the imperial procession as though the emperor were still alive, issuing orders in his name. To mask the smell of decomposition in the summer heat, they loaded neighboring carts with salted fish. Behind the scenes, the 2 men forged a letter in the emperor's name, ordering his eldest son and rightful heir to take his own life, while installing a younger, more pliable son on the throne instead. It worked.